Khan Academy. Welcome to the Daily Homeroom live stream. For those of y'all that this is your first time, this is really just a way for us to stay connected during school closures. Obviously, Khan Academy, we have many resources for students, teachers, and parents to be able to work, whether the school is in session physically or whether it's happening at home, as I think most of y'all are now having to cope with. And we realized above and beyond those resources in math and English and language arts and science and humanities that go from pre-K through college, that we need to provide more support. It's our duty as a not-for-profit with a mission to provide a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere to step up right now in this time of crisis. And so that's why we're doing teacher webinars, parent webinars, this daily homeroom live stream for everyone, as well as things like the daily schedules that many of y'all are now leveraging to think about how to structure your days for students of different age groups. I will remind everyone, as I always do, that we are a not-for-profit organization and we are supported. The only reason we can exist is because of philanthropic donations from folks like yourself. And even before this crisis, we were operating at a deficit. And now, during this crisis, our server traffic is up 2.5, approaching 3 times. Our registrations from students and parents are actually students and teachers are 6-fold. Parent registrations are 20-fold. So if you're in a position to do so, please think about donating to Khan Academy. I do want to give a special shout out to several corporations who stepped up in record time when they realized that we needed help, not just generally, but especially in this COVID response period. Bank of America stepped up in that first weekend, followed by AT&T, Google.org, and now Novartis. This has been incredible help. Any of you who are corporate leaders or work for corporations, we need more help. So I would love to add logos to this. And for all of you individuals out there, we still are running at a significant deficit. So every donation matters, whether it's as small as a $3 donation, $5, $10, we know that that is hard-earned money and we really appreciate it, but we really do need it if we want to support kids around the world and parents and teachers. So today we have a fairly exciting live stream. We have a clinical psychologist, David Anderson. I encourage everyone, I say this every time, to start putting questions on Facebook and YouTube that you might have for either our guest, Dave, or myself about anything. But we're going to talk about something that is very front of mind for a lot of folks right now. We are all socially distanced. Many of us have kids at home. Kids are trying to stay learning, but there's many other things that are going on in all of our minds. Anxiety is up, stress is up for everyone. And I'm hoping Dave can help us navigate, and I'm speaking not just as a representative of the Khan Academy community, I'm also speaking as a parent who has seen some of the difficulties of what we're going through. So thanks for joining us, Dave. And maybe the first question is any general advice you have for parents and students who are just trying to cope with everything going on right now.
Right. Well, look, thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be able to be here and have a forum to kind of talk about some of these things. We have a practice on both coasts, about 60 clinicians at the Child Mind Institute, and we're hearing a lot from parents and students. I would say that, the first things that are at the top of mind, especially for parents, are to manage expectations. I mean, the biggest thing is that none of us have encountered challenges like this before, and I count myself within that with 2 children. It's something where trying to manage the work lives that we were attempting to manage before this crisis hit with childcare and without many of the major supports that we have in a time of online schooling is tough, and it's going to be tough for anybody. So some of the first things we talk to parents about are taking the to-do lists and the kind of level of perfectionism they would normally expect of themselves, and really trying to edit those things down as much as possible to ensure that there's something manageable each day and you have a moment to kind of mindfully pause and perhaps enjoy some of the silver linings of this in terms of time spent with family and an opportunity to connect a little bit more.
And what should we keep a lookout on for our children or even for ourselves? I know you focus on children especially, but as just a clinical psychologist generally, I think sometimes things can happen in bits and pieces, and you've gone too far and it's too late. What should we look out for signs of difficulty in our kids or even ourselves?
I mean, the reality, to your point, is that we always say this, that child therapy is so much about it being mediated by the parents, and parents aren't necessarily the cause of the child's particular difficulties, but they're often the solution. So we spend probably about half the time spending talking to parents, even when the child might be the particular focus of our intervention. And in terms of how parents can support kids at the moment and what we can help them to think about, especially with online schooling, because I'll go back to one of your earlier questions. It's that we're everybody's adapting this kind of new normal. Like schools are trying to outline assignments in certain ways and make it so that it's manageable for the kids, and they may not necessarily be getting data in real time from parents related to what the kids can handle and what kind of scaffolding they need. I think the kids we're especially concerned about at the moment for our clinical population are those with mental health and learning disorders that normally are supported in allowing them access to a school curriculum in school, but which we may see a lack of those kinds of support services, or where parents are being asked to be therapist, speech language pathologist, and teacher all in one. And that's something that's exceedingly difficult for everybody right now.
And how are y'all supporting those parents or supporting those students?
Yeah, a lot of it is retooling our clinical services to be digital at this time. So in many ways, we're starting from a kind of population-focused prevention level in that Child Mind Institute now has 2 Facebook Lives per day. A section of the website, which you can see here, on coronavirus support and resources, just for supporting families. It includes links to our daily tips and Facebook Lives, a link to phone consultations that we can provide right now for families that are having difficulty, and then also articles that are really focused on coping with the coronavirus crisis. We've tried to make those articles targeted to age groups, to parent stress management, the incorporation of mindfulness, and then specific diagnostic clusters where parents may be experiencing certain kind of unique difficulties, say for kids on the autism spectrum or kids who might have difficulty with behavior. So I thank you for scrolling through that section of our website right there. You can also, I'll be doing these Facebook Lives twice next week. So if folks have questions that go unanswered between you and me, Sal, they can catch me again a little bit later.
Now, this is super useful, and we're getting a lot of interesting questions here for you, Dave. This first one is from YouTube. Molly Franklin asks, as an extrovert, how can I keep from losing my mind during quarantine? Exclamation mark.
That's a really good question. I mean, I think that in many ways we've seen an explosion of these kind of self-categorizing terms on Twitter and on the internet right now, where folks realize, like, in terms of the definition of extrovert, we see it operationalized right now on the internet as somebody who really gets their energy and really feels like their mood gets a boost in any given day from the close contact in person that they have with other people. That's where they get their energy. And so, look, what we try to do at first is help extroverts to cope in a sort of accepting way, in that we know that it's not going to be the best in terms of how to support their mental health right now. We know that a lot of the ways that they would normally draw energy or get a mood boost are not available to them. So it's about thinking as creatively as possible. We try to assess with people what the level of relationship is with anybody they might currently be socially distancing with, how they can make the most of those safe in-person connections, and then similarly how they can connect with others to just do daily activities kind of together. The sense that, can you watch a TV show together? Are there online games you can connect with and play with other people? And I'll give one last quite creative suggestion I've seen from some of the teenagers I treat, which is social distancing walks, in the sense that they'll meet up across a block from each other, never be on the same side of the street, but at least feel like they're walking together and can look at each other, in person.
That's fascinating, because I think the rational part of our brain says, why does it matter if we're watching that Netflix show at the same time? But to your point,
Right.
there is something deep inside of us that's saying, oh, other people are experiencing it at the same time.
And that's the thing. I'm deep into cheer right now. Next up is Tiger King. But I think for all of us, it's that, if we don't have a partner or another family member to watch with, it becomes a question of, can we watch with a friend, or do this over some sort of online forum where somebody is on FaceTime at the same time as we're watching on television, and we're watching in real time together. It at least gives some sense of shared experience, particularly for extroverts who really feed off that.
And that's
We've
some of
even
the
seen
logic.
people cook the same food together. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, no, that's cool. Cook the same food and then share a meal. That's a neat idea.
Exactly. And you get to compare, who did it best and, kind of tinker with each other's recipes. There's a lot that can happen with that, especially if your friend is a better chef than you are.
Yeah. Although you could pretend that your own dish was the more delicious, no one will ever know. But this is
Very
somewhat
true.
the
You
logic
can
of even
always,
doing this. Obviously, we could do
right.
video versions of this live stream, and then it might even, we wouldn't have our little technical glitches that sometimes we have with
No,
our
sorry.
broadband.
My whole
No,
family
I'm
is on
I'm
the
guilty
internet.
of it. No,
Trying to have
no one
fun.
should feel broadband guilt at this point.
Yeah.
But this is the
Oh,
value that we're all globally right now having this shared experience, and we're getting a ton of more questions from Facebook.
oh.
Taylor Kobayan asks, "How do you cope with schoolwork load without getting distracted? Personally, as a high school student, I'm struggling with staying focused since I have ADHD. Advice."
So my first job at the Child Mind Institute was running our clinical center for kids with ADHD and behavioral issues. So this is right in my clinical wheelhouse. So thank you for this softball. I mean, look, with a lot of the patients that we're working with ADHD right now, we know certain things. We know that if they get sleep, focus can be better. If they take medicine, it's important to think about the timing and when they're going to get the most benefit from that. And then beyond that, it's important to think about organizational skills and the structuring of the day. So with a lot of my patients right now, we'll think about, especially with adolescents, even though they may be waking up slightly earlier than they would, say, during the school day, we're structuring their workspace to make sure it's as free of distractions as we can, maybe putting any distracting devices where friends might be trying to contact us outside the door, elsewhere in the house. We're trying to get good work blocks in the day, so trying to make sure we've got at least one work block before lunch, and perhaps starting with some of the more ambitious tasks that we know we'll have less energy to really tackle or focus to really tackle later in the day. Structuring in good meals and breaks, and really trying to not save a lot of the challenging work, more like the easy stuff you can kind of knock off for the late night time, either when medicine or motivation has really worn off. And it's about kind of managing yourself like that. And then if you can't talk back to yourself to combat procrastination effectively, sometimes we've seen teens and college students really try to get accountability buddies who can kind of keep them on task and say, all right, let me meet with you for 5 minutes at the beginning of the day. What's your list? And then, how can we make sure we check in a non-judgmental way to keep you on track?
That's super powerful. A lot of what you described, once again, the rational parts of our brains, like, oh, why should I have to text message a friend when I've checked something off of my to-do list, or why should I have to watch a movie, but there's at the same time as someone else. But there's something very powerful about having that community accountability to what you're doing, and we've talked about it at previous live streams. Just getting started, having those early wins, but do some of the high cognitive load things early with breaks. That's super good advice.
And it's really also that friends can help us be accountable in a more non judgmental way. Not to mention, friends are often the ones who are the most gentle with us in helping us to be self compassionate and also to realize we deserve breaks, even if we weren't as efficient in a given day as we expected we would be.
You have better friends than I do. Mine are quite hard. No, I'm kidding.
You choose the
No,
accountabilities carefully.
yes, you should see some of the text accountability that I have with my friends. When we have
Right,
have
right,
one group where we text each other whenever we eat something we should not, and they
right.
are not, they are quite harsh. We are all harsh to each other.
Well, I've seen folks do things where their friend will control a certain portion of their money and it will be donated to a cause they don't support if they, don't accomplish their goals, but to a cause they do support. If it does, you can set up lots of different, schemes for yourself with your friends.
That's powerful. So this next question is from YouTube, and actually this is something where we could probably both take a stab at answering it. YouTube Ashutosh Tiwari says, "Hi Sal, I want to know how you people are coping with COVID-19. I want to know how y'all are keeping your offices running." And I'll take a stab at it. And I'd love to, Dave, you're also in an organization. I'd love to think about how you personally are coping in your organization. But Ashutosh, Khan Academy, this is a hard time for everyone, obviously. The Some of the good things that Khan Academy had going for it is we already had about 35% of our workforce was what we would say remote or distributed. And so we had a lot of the infrastructure in place where we could do meetings over Google Hangouts or Zoom. We would use things like Google Docs to be able to collaborate. And so that aspect of it has been relatively okay for Khan Academy, although it's still been difficult. I think the part that's been much harder is now a lot of our team members are at home. Their children, many of them have very young children, are at home, and you can imagine getting work done while you're also doing childcare, especially if your children are very young, is very difficult. And I know many of the parents and teachers out there listening are coping with the same thing. I consider myself very fortunate. We have I have three young children. My wife, my mother-in-law lives with us, and that helps us kind of be able to tag team a little bit. And especially since the COVID crisis has been going on, and Khan Academy's load, and in fact my workload has gotten even higher than it typically would have been even pre-crisis. I really have to thank my wife and my mother-in-law for stepping up and filling in the gap. And my wife is a physician, a rheumatologist, so you can imagine there's a lot of complexity in her world as well. So she's been kind of the hero of the household lately. But it's tough on everyone, and I think we all just have to take one step at a time, and to quote Frozen 2, do the next right thing. Dave, I'd love to hear personally, how are you coping and your family and your work?
I just love my son's favorite character is Elsa. So if I can mix flexibility, gratitude, and Frozen references into my speech here, I think that was pretty perfect. No, I think that at ChildMind, we have 300 employees across a couple of coasts, and similar to you, there were aspects of our work that were, as a nonprofit, that were already online and fruitful for collaboration, even when we're working at distance. I think others, like clinical care, have both suffered and then also been adapted in new and inventive ways to serve our patients. In the sense that we all knew that the models of treatment that we use for children, adolescents, and families are most tested in person. But in an environment like this, in many ways, we've seen organizations like ourselves kind of figure out how we can become borderless, in that we can serve with consultations or clinical care in really creative ways, using video camera coaching with parents at home or all kinds of different formats online, just to get in touch with our patients and to really make sure we can provide support as best we can during this time. Like you, I have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old at home, and the only way that I've been able to function or keep work up is because of my wonderful wife and in-laws who also live with us. But even with that said, my son is used to a bounded lifestyle. My son's my 3-year-old, and where daddy goes to work each day in an office and he goes to his preschool. And the fact that I'm working upstairs has been a real adjustment period for him, in the sense that he doesn't really understand why he can't be involved in everything. And so I've tried to work out a rhythm where I take a long lunch break with him each day outside in the yard. We have at least a meeting with a team member of mine, not a patient, that he joins each day. And then I just try to drop everything the second the workday is over and spend a good bit of time with him. But I think everybody's trying to find their balance that way.
Whenever I start to feel sorry for ourselves because of my youngest is 5 years old and he's a little bit difficult sometimes, I remind myself of those of you who have a 3-year-old or a 7-month-old at home. So my sympathies.
He,
That's hard.
the funniest thing is that, in the midst of this, I think my wife and I had so many goals for, where we'd like him to be right now. Like, we've gotten through potty training the last year, like he's sleeping in his own big kid bed. And just in the last few nights, in the last week or so, he's found it unable to sleep through the night without one of us in his bed. And we're just adapting to that. Like, I think in the normal rhythm of life, we'd say to ourselves, no, we've got to set some boundaries here. But the reality is our kids, we're trying to stay healthy. We're trying to keep everybody safe and their mood up. So, what's a little bit of relaxing of boundaries right now if it makes everybody feel safe and loved?
Well, that's actually a good segue to this next question that I have here. And this is, the screen time question has always been a question, but obviously a lot of us are relying on screen time, both socially and academically and work-wise. So from Facebook, Samsine Sinetheta, or Sine Theta, I thought it was a real name, Sine Theta, trigonometric username. I like that. Oh, it's
Wow,
Sam
yeah.
Sine Theta. Is it good for kids to go online for 3 hours in the morning, even with breaks? Some kids complain of headaches and bleary eyes. Yeah, I'd love there's the pre-COVID screen time debate, and now there's the current COVID screen time debate.
I just did a webinar for parents on this last week, where we talked about how pre-COVID, the checklist was, in terms of stressing out over screen time balance, we asked parents, let's check off a number of developmental boxes. And as long as you've got those things, you may not have to worry about how much free time your child is spending on screens, as long as you're kind of monitoring the content and the interactions. And we would check off, are they invested in school? Do they have extracurricular activities? Do you have some family time? Do they have face-to-face contact with friends? And are they getting enough sleep? Those would be some of the things on the checklist. The way it's switched for COVID is around basic wellness practices, and then the fact that the balance has really shifted in that we're asking parents, okay, is everybody in the house eating? Do you know where your food is coming from? Let's check like kind of hierarchy of needs type things. Do you feel like everyone's getting enough sleep? How can we help with that? Are people getting exercise in some form? Are you finding ways to give yourself breaks above and beyond school or work responsibilities? And it's this question of once you've kind of checked off those boxes of finding just ways to engage in basic routines of wellness over the course of the day, we're trying to get people to really think about relaxing. That if you want to focus on, say, an hour or two a day to find screen-free activities to structure for kids, congratulate yourself. And then, monitor the content and monitor what they're watching, of course, but it's okay to relax the boundaries during this time, and we'll snap them back over the summer when everybody can be maybe outside and hopefully when we're through this to some degree. But, yeah.
Right. It's an interesting struggle because we're always, we always feel guilt to some degree. I mean, there's good screen time and not so good screen time or
Of
neutral
course.
screen time, I
Yeah.
guess. But obviously, we're all leaning on it more. But it's your point, all of our own mental health, we all
Right.
need, actually might need some screen time to connect with folks to learn. But it also, if it can help offload a parent for even half an hour and give them a break, if their stress level goes down, it helps the student.
And this goes back to the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations related to screen time, where they're conservative, but at the same time they really focus on the idea that mediated viewing with a child, in the sense that you watch something with the kid and talk about it, or educational or high quality programming. This is going to sound like a plant, but many of my patients and families are watching Khan Academy, as part of this because. In that sense, their parents have said, look, if my kids are going to be on screens and that's going to be how they're going to occupy themselves through this crisis, I may as well make some good choices about what I'm exposing them to. And there will be some time that I give them where they choose it. And then other times where I say, here's a forum that I know is all high quality content, choose from this and occupy thyself with something. Like the Boxer Rebellion that I saw framed, in your whiteboard or your chalkboard behind you. That's a great thing to jump into
That
there.
has been my to-do for a while. I still have not made the Boxer Rebellion. I'm well researched on it, but I haven't made it yet. But
In that case, we're previewing that it's coming content that people can really get
it's been
excited
up there. It's been up there for a while. I got to be
about.
careful what I write up there. So
Yeah,
the next
I'm
question is
reading.
maybe almost the symmetric opposite of that. Well, maybe it's related. From Facebook, Surabi Srivastava says, "How to manage a teenager who is taking the quarantine like fish to water? Need to break him away from the screen with very limited choices." So this is a parent who's worried because it's maybe their child really likes this COVID world.
It is. We're hearing that. And sorry, my reception is jumping again, but we're hearing that a lot from teenage parents. Is that we get one of two concerns in one of two directions. It's either I'm worried about how my teenager is going to cope with the lack of connection with friends. How do I deal with that? And that kind of references the answer I gave to an earlier question. And then there's they're not coming out of their room. Like, do you think they're depressed, or could it be that they're just not liking time spent with their family, or they're liking this too much? And all are possible conclusions. We've helped many a parent to just kind of think through the fact that your teenager is in their room may not necessarily mean their mood is low, or they've experienced any disruption to their eating or sleeping patterns, or that they're feeling at all hopeless. They may just be enjoying themselves like a pig in mud, in that sense. So when we see this kind of thing with teenagers, we've tried to talk parents through two kind of major strategies. One is just kind of trying to get to their non-negotiables. When do you want your teenager out of their room? Family meals, at least an hour a day. Maybe they got to take a walk outside because you've decreed they have to get some exercise while practicing social distancing. We get those non-negotiables. Then the other thing we've been coaching parents on is strategies to keep the teenager out of their room when they spontaneously emerge. So in that sense, we try to coach teenage parents or parents of teenagers on, trying not to pepper the kiddo with questions the moment they walk out. Use declarative statements. Praise something you know they might have done, like, it really seemed like you were working on your English essay hard earlier today. Or, hey, I'm making spaghetti sauce. You always know how to make it just right. It's that you're trying to draw them out with skills they have, value to the family, and conversation, rather than, did you get your schoolwork done today? What else was on your list, which inevitably sends a teenager back into their room. So that's kind of,
And I
or
really like
judgment.
that.
But
Yeah, and
yeah,
I really like that last point. A lot of times I always say, and this isn't based in research, but more just gut sense is, teenagers especially are proto-adults. Biologically, nature would allow them to even be parents, not recommending it by any stretch of the imagination. But that implies that they are psychologically and biologically capable of caring for themselves and others. But modern society has kind of just kept them only worrying about themselves. And your last point about helping with the pasta, it's really like, hey, I'm going to treat you like an adult, or a proto-adult, a pre-adult. I'm going to give you some responsibility for the household as well.
well, I think what you're highlighting is the intersection of resources, socioeconomic status, cultural background, and maturity. In the sense that, in within kind of American culture, we have sort of a period of extended adolescence in which we really very gradually ask teenagers who are seeking novelty or seeking new experiences to take on responsibilities. Now, that is very much convergent with the fact that if parents are experiencing job insecurity during this time, or they're overwhelmed for childcare, we're often asking teenagers to take on a larger share of the responsibility in a crisis like this one, or when someone is confronting that kind of situation just in general. So it really, the question of a teenager who takes to COVID a little bit too much usually entails the fact that that teenager's main responsibility prior to this was perhaps school, and that in some sense it's okay if we're a little bit stricter about the idea that we need some help during this time, and it may behoove them to kind of serve the family a little bit better than they might have otherwise, since their day job, school, has sort of shifted a bit.
Yeah, and I think we have time for maybe one more question. There's a couple of questions that are in this category. This is from several folks who are talking about feeling stressed either when they're trying to learn a specific thing like math or reading, or feeling stressed because they actually have a fairly large to-do list from school and they're feeling like they're not able to do it. What tips do you have to those students who are feeling stressed?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that I think everybody's managing this crisis together. So more so than ever, it both feels alone, but you're not alone. So, the reality is we're hearing from so many students who will tell us, I can't manage the workload, or I feel so ashamed because the other students seem to be taking to this online learning like a fish out of water, but not me. And we don't really meet people who are finding it easy during this time. So I think it's more that we want to encourage people to reach out to their fellow students for how they're coping with this, and to reach out to their teachers, because we're all, I think, functioning on more limited time and kind of headspace than we normally have. But at the same time, we want to help. Like, we know that a switch from in-person to online schooling will not come without bumps. And so for that reason, we've seen teachers more so than ever, interested in connecting really quick individually to try to help a student through something or figure out how they can get support. And I think that a lot of teenagers we see and college students are really surprised by that.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that because we've been seeing that type of stress not just among students using Khan Academy, but we've been seeing it even in our own employee base where folks have their headspace is shrunk. There's a baseline of anxiety or dread going on, and then they're
Yeah.
taking care of kids. They have might have a family member who's having financial difficulty because they lost. I mean, there's just all sorts of stresses that are going on, and then they're also trying to do their work, and they're feeling almost guilt or stress. They're like, "Oh my God, the goals that I thought I was going to be able to do are not realistic anymore." And what we're telling our team members and what we tell everyone is, no one is judging anyone right now. Anyone, I only judge the people who are judging others right
Right.
now.
We keep telling folks you take bite-sized chunks and then you do it in as high quality as you can, but don't think about quantity or the same productivity right now. No one's capable of it.
Right. And no one is judging it, and you just have to release yourself. I think, for example, a lot of schools, even my own children's school, they've given a very robust list of things for the students to do. But I think I can speak on their behalf. They completely get
Yeah.
that if kids or their parents are not in a position to keep the kids to do everything on that checklist, it's completely okay. We're all trying to cope with this situation in whatever way we can. So, Dave, thanks so much for joining. We're at time every day. This half an hour goes by fast, and today was even faster than normal, a sign of how much fun we're having. I think you're going to be able to join us hopefully in future live streams. And I just want to tell everyone, as what Dave and I just said, you might feel physically separated from others, and Dave gave some good ideas for how you might feel a little bit mentally closer or emotionally closer to others in this time of crisis. And the whole point of this live stream is for all of us to realize that we're in this together. The whole world is going through this. So as best as you can, keep safe and stay healthy, and don't beat up yourself too much, and take some time to breathe, relax, meditate, whatever it takes to kind of give yourself that mental reset. We'll see you
That
tomorrow.
is brilliant advice.